Welcome. You're listening to Sons and Kings, the Psalm 2 show where we unlock the church's ancient battle cry of divine filiation and embrace the gentle kingship of Christ through the riches of the Christian tradition. Happy Tuesday. Let's begin. Welcome back to another episode of Sons and Kings. We're continuing our discussion of verse 3. Pat, could you give us that one more time?
Let us break their bonds asunder, and let us cast away their yoke from us.
Nice. So last episode, we were talking about bonds, and kind of like the ways we can perceive them, as well as, in like a negative sense, sin, as well as, you know, relationships, and actually sort of the freedom that comes from just really honoring those relationships. Um, and then we start just touching a little bit on the second half of the verse, huh? The yoke, right? That yoke part. Can you tell us anything about the yoke word?
Oh, yeah, it's a really interesting word, yugum. Um, we get lots of things it's the same. You can hear it's the same word as yoke. Uh, the G and the K are related,
Hmm.
and the Y and the I are related. It's the same word, but we get lots of words in English from it. The most interesting one to me is conjugal. That it's conjugal means the person you're yoked with, which I think is a really powerful image for marriage. Is that if the person you're yoked with, if that's supposed to help you go in the same direction and create a fertile land, right? That's kind of the
Wow.
imagery of being yoked together with someone is you're trying to create. And if you start differing, then you're not going to plow straight lines. You're not going to make any progress. Nothing's going to grow. No fruit's going to come from that. So anyway,
You're messing up my furrow.
exactly. So, but yeah, that's the word yoke. That's yugum.
Nice. No, that's a beautiful image. I never heard that before. That's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. It's it is beautiful to think about. Yeah.
Nice, nice. So, we're talking about how we should be perceiving bonds
Mhm.
and so, one thing that's kinda cool is, we have right in the Gospels, Jesus says, "My yoke is light, my burden is easy and my yoke is light, take my yoke upon me, for I am meek and humble of heart."
Mm.
And, and it's an invitation at the end of the day, right? It's the same invitation perhaps that, you know, the kings of the earth and the people, you know, we assume have been experiencing from God and the moral law, but not wanting to, you know, not wanting to be bound by it, right?
It's so interesting too because in that same in that same chapter of Matthew, where where Christ says, "For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Before that, very shortly before that, he says, "All things have been handed over to me by my Father."
Mm.
And so his kingship, his power, like that kingship, is tied to this humility, this lightness of relationship. Like there's infinite power there, and yet he doesn't use that power to call us into some type it's not a coercive use of the power, but it's actually to free us and help our experience to be lighter and easier. And that's why he even says, um, he calls this out, for us to take his yoke upon him to those who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and that we will have rest. And, I just think about that when just kind of like a conversation, last episode, we were talking about how sometimes we see our spiritual life as a series of burdens and difficult things and just do's and don'ts and we don't see it as a pathway to rest and to freedom. And yet, like, obviously rest is so important in the Old Testament and the New Testament. I mean, think about how much the the Pharisees fight Jesus on how to rest well. Like, you're not resting well in the Sabbath. You're resting too little. Like, it's just like, it's almost like, like,
Yeah.
but Christ is like, no, I'm giving you real rest. Like, we're going to actually enter into a spiritual rest. And as a part of our spiritual life, yes, there will be, some effort in that. I almost think about, when we and there's some neuroscience on this and some other stuff, but like when we feel tired after work, when we do like some really good work, we feel like a good tired after that.
Mm.
Like and it helps us to get a good rest after that. Um, and so yeah, there could be some effort involved in this rest, but it's really light. And again, at the end of the day, all these efforts and things that we may do to kind of grow closer to God, really, it's for our own benefit and for our own kind of ultimate happiness and beatitude. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to think about the word religion here, which literally means to bind back. I think it's a kind of a relevant word because um, I think when you think about religion in terms of rules, you that's because you've lost sight of you're not just you're not just bound, you're being bound back to someone.
Mm,
That it's not just a impersonal command, it's a personal command. It's Jesus trying to draw you back, trying to he's the one binding you back to himself and trying to draw you on with the bond of religion. And that that includes quote unquote commitments. Um, but he's just these rules are established that way you have an encounter with Christ. The rule is you go to Sunday once a week. That's a rule so that you have an encounter with Jesus once a week. That's what that's about. Um, and so once you if you start losing the sense of the that you're bound to someone
mm.
to a God who loves you, and instead view it as just these are just kind of some chains of an impersonal and undefiable command, then you aren't you aren't seeing what they're really about,
Yeah.
which is pulling you closer and closer to Jesus.
Yeah. Um, I love, St. Josemarie's image of the donkey, and maybe we've talked about this already on this podcast, but this donkey is very docile and like kind of like eager to work and is ready, just like kind of like put me in, coach. Um,
I'm the donkey. Put me in.
and and like he wants to be like yoked up to the water wheel, and like then just to like to go. If he's just going in a circle and he doesn't really see the fruits of his labor, he's really excited, so to speak, the ears perked up, you know, ready to listen. Um, and that's such a great image of, and even like, is the word for donkey related to yoke itself? Like, or I guess we call it like the beast of burden, like Mentum, or is
Oh,
that sort of related?
that's a great question. I bet so. Let's say yes.
Okay.
I don't know. I can look that up.
But it's interesting. I want to pick up too what you were saying, Pat, about like
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
religio, like religion and like the buying back, because so many people are against. Is correct?
Yeah, yeah. It's a
Oh,
contracted.
nice.
It's Jugamentum as from
Wow.
you can go to join. I guess join, yoke. All of these are the same family of
Yeah.
words. Anyway, sorry.
But no, so many people say now I'm spiritual but not religious because they associate
Mm,
religio, like they associate that relationship with obligation. Um, and they want like the benefit, like quote unquote, like they want the rights with no responsibility, if you will. Like they want the rights of a union with God, if you will, but none of the corresponding responsibility, which everybody knows, like we talk about bonds in a relationship would deteriorate if in that relationship the only thing you did was emphasize your rights. Like let's imagine you're married and you're like, my right is you get home and that's the only thing you're saying, like, okay, wife, these are my rights. Make this food that's gonna be a
Yeah.
disastrous. Let me just say, don't do
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Everybody
yeah,
listen.
yeah, yeah.
It will not work out well for you. Um
You've tried that.
I've not tried that. I'll just say like any correct relationship, any right ordered relationship, any just relationship has rights and responsibilities. And that's also from Catholic social doctrine, right? There's rights and responsibilities are mutually, they actually are, they almost meet each other. Like when one person's rights exist, another person's responsibility meets. God has really done all the work in this relationship.
Mm,
And what he asks us to do as a part of the relationship is nothing. I mean, it's really like when you think about the Christ came and he died, he laid down his life, as he says, like, there's no greater love than this to lay down your life for your friends. He did all that. He did the greater part. Like he did everything.
Mhm.
And then, yet he continues again. I think about Samson. He failed time and time again. He continued to call him back. So, but when people think of religion, they don't think of that Samson story where, yeah, sometimes maybe you don't meet all your obligations, but at the end of the day, God is still calling you back and back. He's constantly, and I love how you said religio is binding back. The whole reason why Christ came is to bring us back. He died to bring us back into that relationship. And so I think about these kings of the earth who rebel against that relationship, and Christ literally laid down his life to restore it. Yeah.
Yeah, in relation to that, I like this quote from St. Josemaria, one of his homilies in Christ is Passing By, where he says, a cry of universal rage seems to repeat itself, calling back to the first verse. They break his sweet yoke, throw off his burden, a wonderful burden of holiness and justice, of grace, of love, and of peace. They are infuriated when faced with his love. They laugh at the unprotected goodness of a God who refuses to use his legions of angels to defend himself. And I think the reason the kings of the earth rebel is it's because they don't understand the invitation, that it's not an assertion of power,
Mm.
but it's an assertion of love and of an open invitation to our freedom. That's all we have to do. He's done everything for us, um, and he exposes himself to our refusal or acceptance of this love, and that's the kings of the earth can't understand that, and sometimes we don't either.
Yeah. And earlier on in that selection, it says, people motivated by hatred cannot understand this mercy. And like, yeah, they can't understand that invitation. Yeah. Well said.
Mhm. Mhm. Nice. Well, we'll continue this. So we'll see you next time on Sons and Kings.
Why this tumult among nations, among peoples this useless murmuring? They arise, the kings of the earth. Princes plot against the Lord and his anointed. Come, let us break their fetters. Come, let us cast off their yoke. He who sits in the heavens laughs. The Lord is laughing them to scorn. Then he will speak in his anger. His rage will strike them with terror. It is I who have set up my king on Zion, my holy mountain. I will announce the decree of the Lord. The Lord said to me, you are my son. It is I who have begotten you this day. Ask, and I shall bequeath to you the nations. Put the ends of the earth in your possession. With a rod of iron you will break them, shatter them like a potter's jar. Now, O kings, understand. Take warning, rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with awe and trembling. Pay him your homage, lest he be angry and you perish, for suddenly his anger will blaze. Blessed are they who put their trust in God.
Hey, this is Jake. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Sons and Kings, the Psalm 2 show. We're really glad that you joined us today. We hope you got something out of it. And if you did, I'd love to invite you to share it with a friend or even just like or subscribe to the platform. It really helps us to get the message out to more people, help more people with the show. Thank you again, and we'll see you in the next episode.